Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a psychological thriller film, STONEHEARST Asylum. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. In a big hall of a medical university in England, a professor is instructing a new discovered mental disorder called hysteria. A female patient who suffers from this illness is presented to the class by the professor's assistant. While the professor demonstrates more symptoms, the woman suddenly stands up and shouts for help, claiming she is sane. But soon she is controlled by the assistant, and her behaviors are explained to be the common symptoms of hysteria. It is near Christmas time. A young doctor named Edward from Oxford University arrives at STONEHEARST Asylum in the middle of nowhere. When he is stopped and questioned at the gate by the security guards, he says that he has sent a letter to the director to inform his visit in advance. They allow him in and send him to the director's office. After a chat, the bald director decides to take Edward as an internship and offers him a tour of the madhouse. Edward is shown all kinds of patients here. One of them claims himself as a horse. Soon he notices the female patient from the professor's class. Her name is Graves, and she is playing the piano, looking quite normal mentally. Immediately Edward's mind is filled with hormones for this graceful woman. Soon he discovers that the patients are allowed to do activities freely as normal people. He is amazed by this unorthodox method, after Director Bald explains that he does not believe in drugging or incarcerating patients. Plus, his unique treatments will create more trust between doctors and patients, and decrease the patient's social anxieties. At night, all people are having a fancy dinner together. A cross-dressing nurse proposes a toast to Edward. Right before he drinks his wine, Graves kicks his leg under the table, causing him to spill the drink. Graves leads Edward to a room to clean his mess. She quietly warns Edward to flee the asylum as soon as possible. Edward is confused by her shocking warning and does not take it seriously. While Edward getting ready for bed, he hears some noises with regular paces. He grabs his tiny gun, a lamp, and follows the noises to a boiler room. To his surprise, he finds many people are locked in cages. They beg him to release them. An old man with a gray beard tells Edward that he is the real director, and others locked up are the real doctors and nurses. Edward could not believe what he heard until a woman calls out his name and says she is the head nurse who handled Edward's letter before. Graybeard explains that they are drugged and caged by the revolting patients. Then the patients disguise themselves as doctors and nurses and live with other patients. After being told the truth, Edward rushes to Graves and suggests she run away with him. Right at that moment, Director Bald arrives to do the night checkup with the head guard and questions Edward's appearance at such a late time. Edward lies that he loses his way. Unluckily, his escaping plan is not going to happen anytime. Later, he visits Graybeard and asks about the history of Director Bald's mental illness. It is said that Director Bald is a very dangerous patient who had murdered many people before he was sent here. And his medical record is hidden in a wine cabinet in the director's office. The next day, Edward is asked to do the morning checkup with Director Bald, who is accompanied by the head guard. When visiting a patient with violent tendencies, Edward is choked badly by the patient. Thanks to his useful medical knowledge, Edward calms the patient down and gains his trust. Watching close by, Director Bald is surprised by Edward's great abilities. Graves encounters Edward and lays out the fact that the real staff here used to torture patients with an extreme method such as electric shock. Edward lifts his shirt and exposes some scary scars on his body. He explains that he was often abused in the orphanage he grew up, so he understands how it feels to be treated brutally. That night, Edward sneaks into the director's office, planning to steal Director Bald's medical record. Meanwhile, two locked-up doctors break free from the dungeon and escapes. Soon they are found by asylum guards and chased to a cliff. After one of them jumps off the cliff, the head guard kills the other doctor and takes the body back to the asylum. After seeing the body covered with bad cuts, Edward blames the head guard should not be too cruel. Edward returns to his room and reads Director Bald's medical records. It says that Director Bald used to be a military doctor who killed many badly wounded soldiers instead of healing them. Being identified as a crazy person, Director Bald is sent to this asylum, but not accused of murder later. As the director at that time, Graybeard tortured Director Bald in many inhumane ways for 9 years. But unexpectedly, Director Bald had never given any confession to his crimes. The next morning, Director Bald asks Edward to observe treatment for a patient. Edward recognizes that the patient is Graybeard and claims his worries about the treatment. Director Bald insists on using the new electric shock therapy he invented. Edward could not prevent this happen, but has to follow Director Bald's instruction. After the shock, Greybeard loses his consciousness and turns into a vegetable. While people are getting decorations ready for the new year, Edward sneaks food for the caged staff and says he will help them to escape on New Year's Eve when everybody's celebrating. During the New Year party, the head guard wants to spray his evil hormones on a female patient, but she refuses to obey him. The head guard soon loses control of himself and kills the girl. Edward sits in the ward that Director Bald used to live, searching for any possible ways to unlock Director Bald's deep secrets that caused his madness. He finds a picture of a young soldier in the padded wall and keeps it in his pocket. Then he goes to the basement and quietly puts the drug in the wine. Everybody finds the young girl's dead body lying on the floor. Graves holds the dead body and cries sadly. However, Director Bald announces that the young girl is dead because of a heart disease. Graves realizes that the harmonious community imagined by Director Bald that allows mental patients to live as normals does not work at all. Meanwhile, the head guard bumps into Edward in the basement. Edward shoots the guard in the ear with a tiny gun and knocks him down after a quick fight. On the other hand, all patients continue the New Year's party and burn some medical equipment. Before they drink their wine, the head guard wakes up and reveals that Edward has drugged the drinks. Edward gets knocked unconscious immediately. Later he wakes up in a room where he is tied to a bed and about to be shocked by electricity. Graves comes and asks Edward why her picture is in his pocket watch. Edward explains that he falls in love with Graves when he saw her for the first time at the professor's class. After he locates her, he comes and plans to take her away from this asylum. Graves is deeply moved by Edward's love and rescue plan. Director Bald arrives with an electric shock machine. Edward persuades Director Bald to show him Graves's picture he keeps in his pocket. Director Bald is shocked by the picture, showing a soldier whom he killed when he was in the army. Because of that, he loses his mind and staggers out of the room in a daze. When the head guard wants to continue the electric shock, Graves stands up and electrocutes him to death. A fire breaks out. Graves unties Edward and leads the patients and the caged staff out of the building. When Edward finds Director Bald, he has become near comatose from the guilt over his actions. In the flashback, after seeing many soldiers' sufferings and hearing their horrifying cries during the war, Director Bald executed the wounded soldiers as a merciful act to end their pain. But finally, he failed to kill himself due to the lack of bullets. As a result, he became crazy since then. The asylum is taken over by the real staff now. Weeks later, Graves' husband comes to visit Graves with a professor. However, the head nurse tells them that Graves has left the madhouse, with the signature signed by Dr. Edward to prove that her illness is all healed. The professor is astonished and claims that he himself is actually Dr. Edward, but he hasn't signed anything to release Graves. It's revealed that the imposter Edward is another mental patient, who was demonstrated in the professor's class where he met Graves. He fell in love with Graves at first sight and make up a rescue plan to save Graves. Now the couple is spending their life peacefully and safely in a madhouse locating in Italy, where the patients are allowed to stay with their loved ones and heal naturally. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Peace out.